Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Calvinomics. This is my third episode. As I just said, I am brand new to creating a YouTube series and as well as like streaming on the platform and recording myself. However, this is something I've been wanting to do. I used to be a middle school teacher for a while, actually about 8 years, and worked in various roles. And just recording myself is something new. But however, this is a topic I like to talk about. And if you get something out of it, great. I hope you do. We'll see if anyone subscribes or listens or watches. I always appreciate your comments too. So if you watch the first couple episodes, they were a little bit longer than I wanted. They're at 20 minutes. I want to try to keep these things below 10 minutes. So I'm going to just get right to it. This might be a multi-part series, essentially, because I'm going to be talking about tariffs. The tariffs are all over the place. They've been around for a very long time. It's nothing really new. However, just the way they've been publicized, basically since the first Trump term, has taken it to a whole new level. So I loaded up a bunch of stuff, and we'll just kind of go over these things one by one. So here is the USDebtClock.org. First couple episodes, I talked about the U.S. national debt per citizen, taxpayer, median income, median home, and some other topics. And since the United States is essentially broke, here's how much the United States produces in goods in a year. This is where we're at right now. This is how much debt we're producing. And you can see that the debt is 124% of GDP, which means that the United States government is running a very large deficit. Chances are, this will be much higher. You can actually go forward. Oops, I forgot that to click on my other screen. So if you go fast forward to 2030, see our national uh, debt should probably be around at the current rate around 43 trillion. Somewhere by 2040, most likely it'll be over 50 trillion unless something's done. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Well, that means our taxes will most likely go up, and if you work, and most likely you do, you're having to pay taxes, and you notice that things have gotten expensive. States have been raising their taxes, their property taxes, they're everywhere. It just never stops. Tariffs are essentially another form of tax. It gets complicated, so I'll probably make this a multi-part series. That way, these episodes aren't 20 minutes apiece. But let's just start with how much has been brought in. So as you click on this right here, it gives a description at the top of the screen. So customs duty is a tariff or tax imposed on goods when transported into the U.S. and is paid by the importer of record. So basically, if a company is buying things from overseas and they import, just let's use the big one, China or anywhere else, Brazil, we're talking about Brazil too, uh, the importer has to pay that tax. That money goes to the government. And so, as you can see here, $374 billion in tariff revenue within the last, I don't know, maybe year and a half is pretty incredible. So, I got some links here. So, how much money in tariffs have been collected since Trump took office? Now, these numbers vary all over the place, depending on the source, blah, 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 blah. As you can see, I clicked on some other ones. Late 2025, 2026, President Trump's policies have led to a massive increase in custom duties with over $2 billion in tariffs collected between January 25 and December 25 alone. The surge in revenue driven by broad tariff increases on Chinese and other goods marks a roughly 150% increase in duties compared to 2024. So the taxes have gone up, the tariffs have gone up substantially. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the effect of tariffs. Essentially, what, as you can see here, here is monthly tariff revenue, kind of remains, whatever, billions, 10 billion, and it just shoots up. If you remember, I am not going to get too much into, who's right, who's wrong. Trump, go Trump or go Biden or boo this, but it just is what it is. I'm just talking about it. I like talking about it. Nothing I can do about it. At least right now, other than just deal with it, right? And then just change habits accordingly. So as you can see here, basically tariffs have been risen across the board. Manufacturing, I'll talk about this a little bit later. It's going to start getting complex. I just want to show you some graphs first, at least for this first episode. So as you can see here, this is different than the AI one. This is from bipartisanpolicy.org. The U.S. brought in $289 billion in revenue from gross tariff and certain other excise taxes, tens of billions above levels in recent years. So 2017, here you go, it starts increasing. When Trump took office the first time, he raised taxes. That was like number one right off the bat. First thing he did. Biden came in and continued them. In fact, he also put in some other ones. So as you can see here, it never. One thing is, once the government gets used to money, it most likely never reverses course. And then all of a sudden, it was like, here we go, 115 at 2022. So in the last 10 years, that was the highest. And then it just shoots up to almost $300 billion. Okay, so we'll go here, see another $200 billion, and record breaking. Now, this money is used to fund government activities. The military budget, I believe, now is around $1.5 trillion, well over what it used to be. All that stuff. So these companies, corporations, whoever's importing pays the tariff. They have to raise the prices. They can't just eat it all the time. They're going to lose profit. They're going to lose their margin. They're going to go out of business. They have to pass on the cost. If you think that you're like, wow, things have gotten very expensive, yes, you're right. Even coffee, because a lot of coffee does come from outside of our country. In fact, a good chunk of it, especially from Brazil. So here, who actually pays tariffs? Not only does AI say it, click on all these links, YouTube videos, and I mean, almost 100 times out of 100, it's going to say they're passed on to consumers and firms, with studies showing that for recent U.S. tariffs, up to 96% of the burden falls on American consumer and businesses through higher prices. Okay, go back. Who's paying this? Same thing. Same thing here. Well, here's the people who are paying the most in tariffs. Now United States is in negotiation. So, for instance, the EU is one that I really like. The EU had a much higher like tariff on cars than we did. Ours was like a point and a half, and theirs was like 10%. So Trump came in and was like, "That's not fair," and then raised them, and it went to like 30%. Now they're negotiating it down to 15. But either way, it went from 1.5% or 2% to 15, which is still a substantial increase. Another thing here, who pays Trump's tariffs? All says the same thing. U.S. importers pay them over time. However, foreign exports can be expected to bear a small but rising cost through price cuts, but while most of the cost will be borne by U.S. consumers and higher prices. So over and over and over again. Here is CNBC from 2019, was when I worked for KTSW, 89.9 FM. This is the radio station for Texas State University. I actually started a podcast called Calvinomics. And when Trump passed his first set of tariffs, I couldn't find the exact source, but it said, I remembered it at the time, but they said that when he did his first round of tariffs, it was the largest tax increase since 1993. And in fact, I remember reading, and I have to go back and find it because I know people are like, source, is the fact that it was amounted to be one of the sixth largest tax increase in American history. And so prices just shoot up. And so what did he do when he came back in the second time? Boom, more. So now here we go with Brazil. Now, if you notice, a lot of our coffee comes from Brazil. So you can just type in how much coffee does the U.S. import from Brazil, and then you can just look it up. In the United States, 7.6, 8.9, blah, 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 blah. 1.9 to 2 billion worth of coffee to the U.S. that year. So it's a lot of coffee. Currently, almost 17% of the coffee exports go to the United States. Okay, 50% tariff, because what happened was this guy got in trouble. Trump wasn't happy. All of a sudden, Bolsonaro, there's a 50% tariff rate against Brazil, most likely some type of retaliatory or punishment and whatever. It just got to be ridiculous. There was a map that I did have loaded in here, but it got to a point where now you're starting to see coffee prices get out of control, and then Brazil is obviously not happy. So here's another article I was going over, but we won't talk about that. I'll actually probably go into separate countries. So, and then just what are tariffs used for? Just straight up AI overview. So I have it right here: to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. Talk about that in another episode. Raise government revenue, yes. And acts as leverage in trade negotiations, yes. Tariffs are goods and services imported from other countries. And so if you just click on this, you can read this. However, you can see first one, raise government revenue. Since we are broke and we have a lot of debt, and then we have $6 trillion that has been paid in interest on that debt, we have to get the money. And so most governments just go right to taxes. And as you can see here, did Biden keep Trump's tariffs in place? Yes, the Biden administration kept a majority, and in fact, raised some on electric vehicles and steel, which was true. You can even NPR reported on it, and then steel has gone up even more. So if you're at the point where you're looking at, high cost of everything, high cost to build a house, high cost to build a skyscraper, why aren't they building any homes? It's because, and if they were to build homes now, that it would be incredibly expensive because you got to import wood, you got to import steel, all the stuff. This is what is going on. And so as I talk about tariffs in another episode, I'm actually going to start getting into like tariffs specifically by country, and I'll go into a little bit more in the next episode. But basically, just to recap, here's our national debt. Here's our tariff revenue within the last, I don't know, year and a half. This is probably a rolling 374, but this number does change by source, anywhere from 200 billion to 280 billion to 285. But as you could see, I mean, the graphics, 288, you could just see how, compared to previous years in the last 10 years, it just shot through the roof last year alone. So, like I said, if you're feeling the cost of it, you're feeling the brunt of it, that's all that people talk about. There's a very, very good reason. Anyway, this is my third episode. Tariffs, I'll talk about it again in the next coming episode. I want to keep these videos a little bit shorter. I hope you enjoyed it.